Why is it that so many people have a hard time calling terrorists terrorists? Hi, this is Phil Gurski, President and CEO of Borealis Threat and Risk Consulting, and you're listening to Quick Hits, podcasts about all things related to national security and public safety. When I look at what's happening around the world, and I scan news sites online to learn about terrorist attacks here or there or other elements that are related to national security and public safety, one thing that has struck me over time is how different sources elect to refer to terrorist groups. We're going to talk a lot about meaning today, an awful lot about usage, but here's a couple examples just from this morning, November the 20th. This is from a Bangladeshi news site, which says that the Rapid Action Battalion, the RAB, which is their counter-terrorism elite force, has detained 4 members of an Islamist outfit from a militant hideout. So, Islamist outfit from a militant hideout. This story from a Nigerian news source: the Nigerian military has intercepted a ransom payment to suspected members of the Boko Haram sect. S-E-C-T, sect. And finally, an article from the New York Times from a couple of days ago, which is entitled, "What is a Militia? And why is the word so controversial these days?" What these articles point out is something fundamental to our understanding of what is and what is not terrorism. In each case, the elements being referred to, so in the case of Bangladesh, we're talking about a group called the Neo-JMB, which is a terrorist group, has carried out terrorist attacks in Bangladesh. In Nigeria, of course, we're talking about Boko Haram, which is a terrorist group that's carried out thousands of attacks and killed thousands of people in Nigeria. And in the United States, we're talking about groups like the Wolverine Militia or Michigan Militia? This was a bunch of wankers who tried to kidnap the Michigan governor and hold her hostage, which to me sounds like an act of domestic terrorism. Domestic terrorism, the term being used by the Americans. So what's going on here? Why can't we call these people terrorists? Terrorism, yes, it has 200 plus definitions, I recognize that. Terrorism is an act of serious violence, planned and or carried out by individuals inspired by political, ideological, or religious motivations. That's what the Canadian Criminal Code says, and that's also what a lot of other legal codes around the world have to say about it. So isn't it kind of straightforward that the Neo-JMB in Bangladesh constitute a terrorist group? Why are they called militants? Boko Haram is definitely a terrorist group, so why is it being called a sect? A sect to me strikes me as something to do with religion. You know, you have Catholics and Protestants and Baptists. Those are different sects of Christianity. You have Sunnis and Shia. Those are different sects of Islam. Boko Haram's not a sect. It's a terrorist group. And getting to this whole notion of the militia, you know, this goes back to this notion of the Second Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which, quote, "a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed." This, of course, is a phrase that has been bandied about for 250 years now and is used erroneously, in my view, to suggest that Americans have to own guns because it's in the Constitution. No, the Constitution says that, you know, the right to bear arms within a militia should not be infringed upon. And if you go back to those days, the militias were forces that were gathered together to fight against British hegemony, the fact that Britain was the colonial power. They had a war of revolution about this way back in 1776. And it led to the independent creation of the United States of America. That's what a militia is for. And note what the Constitution says: a well-regulated militia. Not a bunch of guys with guns. Not a bunch of wankers running through Upper Peninsula, Michigan trying to kidnap people. Not a bunch of Boko Haram terrorists who co-opt little girls as young as 6 to become suicide bombers. Not people in Bangladesh that bomb cafes and kill civilians. Those aren't well-regulated militias, so why are we calling them that? Why can't we just call a spade and call these people terrorist groups? I don't get it. I'm really struggling with this. And I recognize the old arguments about one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter, a very hackneyed phrase that has far outlived its usefulness as far as I'm concerned. But I do agree that when we look at terrorism as a phenomenon, there certainly are instances in which we can agree to disagree. There are gray areas in which, for example, look at what's happening in northern Iraq and Syria. There are Kurdish groups that the Turks certainly see as terrorists, but others would say, not really. Those really are forces fighting for Kurdish independence, for Kurdish freedom. Ergo, they might be construed as freedom fighters. But for everyone else, why are we shying away from calling them terrorists? Are Al-Qaeda militants? I often see in Afghan reporting, Taliban insurgents. What are they surging in against? Taliban aren't insurgents, they're a terrorist group. They kill little girls for going to school. How is that not a terrorist group? For religious motivation, how is that not a terrorist group? I don't want to reduce this to political correctness or a desire not to offend anybody. That's a very Canadian thing, by the way. We try not to offend anybody, right? We're always the ones saying sorry. But can we please get past this? Can we simply use the proper terminology to refer to the proper phenomenon? Any individual and or group which targets civilians for serious acts of violence and is doing so because of some kind of underlying political, ideological, or religious motivation is full stop a terrorist. They're not parts of a militia, they're not insurgents, they're not sects, they're not guys that, want to have a shoot up in a bar. They belong to groups which are terrorist in nature, and we have to call them terrorists. Now, I'm not so naive to think that my word is going to carry any emphasis or any influence on what journalists do or what they say or what they write. But I'll tell you what I do. When I report on events around the world that are clearly terrorist in nature, and when the journalist in question says Taliban insurgents killed 15 in Badakhshan province or in Kabul, I take out the word insurgent and I put in the word terrorist. When someone writes Boko Haram militants kidnap little girls to keep them as sex slaves, I take out the word militants and I put in the word terrorist. I do my own editorializing because I don't want to kowtow to political correctness. I want to call people what they are. And frankly, if people are terrorists, they should be called terrorists. End of story. Anyhow, that's what I think. Do you agree with me? Is there any room for using words like militia or insurgents or militants? Are these accurate terms? Does it depend? Or is a terrorist is a terrorist? Let me know what you think. You can reach me on email borealisrisk@gmail.com or on Twitter @BorealisSaves. You'll also find me on LinkedIn and on Facebook. If you like the content, want to receive more, go to my website, borealisthreatandrisk.com, hit the subscribe button, provide your email address. You'll get all the content free of charge first thing in the morning to your inbox. I'd love to hear from you. Feedback on this podcast as well as on others. Maybe some ideas for future ones. I'll talk to you again soon. Until then, stay safe.